So welcome everyone to the Monday, February 12th Committee of the Whole meeting. We are going to bring the meeting back into session following a recess where we had an where we had a bylaw and policy committee meeting. Are there any items, we'll begin by adding any items to the agenda. I did have one item I wanted to add, membership on the Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee for discussion today. Any other items? Okay, so with that addition, could I have a motion to approve, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Melanie Sampson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Sorry, those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item is the review of the minutes from January 15th, 2024. Are there any errors or omissions to note? Okay, could I have a motion to approve, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon has made the motion to approve the minutes from January 15th. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, that motion is carried. All right, so the next item on our agenda brings us to presentation time. So we do have, I believe, Paul Beasley with us from Property Valuation Services Corporation to chat about property evaluations, which I know has been a hot topic, and I believe you have a second person with you. So I'll hand things over to you, Paul. Thank you for joining us virtually.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
first, so that the average of that CPI is what's used for that, for that cap rate for that year. So last year, if you recall, in 2020, for the 2023 assessments, it was around 7.7%, and this year for the 2024 assessments, it was set at 3.2%. So, a couple things on the CAP program. For an eligible property, must be a residential property under 4 units, at least 50% owned by a Nova Scotia resident. If it's a condo, it would have to be owner occupied, and the property must not have sold unless it was within the immediate family the year prior to be eligible. And then this is what it would look like on a on your notice. So if it's an eligible property that has a cap assessment, then the cap would, and the cap is lower than the assessed value, the cap would appear just as seen here on the screen with that notice, and then the lower the two values would be, the lower between the cap and the assessed value would be your taxable assessed value, so the amount that the owner would pay taxes on. Little assessment roll activities for Richmond County. So what we've seen in the calendar year 2023, we reviewed 212 permits. Property transactions was 621, and appeals that we received last year was 187. So a common question is, how many of those did we amend? So last year we amended around 25% of those. So approximately 45 out of the 187, the values of them were amended. Looking at the assessment roll total for this year that we sent out, that we sent to the municipality before the end of December, and then mailed it to property owners there on January 8th. So there's the big numbers there. I'll walk through the percentages. So total residential, that would include, so that includes everything within residential. It includes the taxable and exempt accounts. It would include market growth through our reassessment. But also everything that was added through the building permit review, the sales review, so just total year-over-year comparison. So of the residential assessment roll, so that those numbers there from 2023 to 2024 around just under a 22% increase when you factor everything in there. The total residential with cap, so that'd be amended down because a bulk of the residential properties was fall into the cap program, and that increase is 10.5%, which was, I think it was around 10% last year, so it was pretty much in line with what that was last year with the residential with the cap. Total commercial was just under 4% last year. This year it's 4.9%, so in line as well. And the total assessment roll went from 1.2 up to 1.4. So in Richmond County, there's approximately 82 of the residential dwellings that are eligible. 82% of the residential dwellings are eligible or in the CAP program. So yeah, those were the increases that we've seen. Again, that it doesn't include just market activity, but includes everything with the market, the building permits that were added, and the sales reviews through the reassessment as well. Some sector highlights, what we've seen in the just across the province with all the major sectors. So despite rising costs and with building materials and labor, the commercial development did continue. Business and industrial parks did continue to see market growth. Apartments continue to be strong investments, both the buying and remodeling of the existing buildings and the construction of new ones as well. What we've seen was the retail sector saw a steady tendency in increased leases, and as we've been kind of seeing since this COVID or the past 3 to 4 years, the office buildings were remaining flat, which is reflecting the response to shifts in workplace requirements. So we, unfortunately, what we've seen the past couple of years is the increase what we would have the natural disasters. So I know everyone there is familiar with Fiona that we had back in 2022, which was a pretty wide event from really ranging from Cape Breton up past Truro, depending on certain areas. And then last year we also had the fires in Tantala and within different neighborhoods. So the 2024 assessments did consider the impact of the wildfires and flash floods. So we worked in those areas. We worked directly with those impacted municipalities that were affected, and then we had assessors visiting all those properties within that neighborhood that those fires happened. And we're in continued contact now as well with those owners in the municipality. And then we'll monitor those impacted areas closely for market trends and rebuilding efforts going forward as well. We just finished the inquiry and appeal period, so we mailed out our notices, as I'm sure you're well aware, January 8th this year. As per the Assessment Act, there's a 31-day appeal period, so that ended at midnight February 8th. During the appeal period, we had all our assessors on the phones because call volume is quite heavy. We had them all on the phones for those 31 days. We do still have some on the phones, and we will continue all year for owners that have any questions or questions about their notice or property details. Just our contact information, so that's our 1-800 number there for property owners, or our email address at inquiry@pbsc.ca. And municipal staff as well. It's the same phone number, just a different queue that you'll be sent through for municipal staff. And the email address if you're contacting us from municipality is servicedesk@pbsc.ca. And that's our last slide. Paul or myself would be happy to answer any questions.
And I appreciate we went through that fairly quickly. So we wanted to save time for your questions. If you had some questions, we'd be glad to take them.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, Adam, get rid of the presentation. Good.
Thank you very much, Paul and Adam. Always informative to hear from your team, and particularly this year, as I know many of us were contacted about assessments, when they were released. Councillors, do you have any questions for Paul or Adam at this time? No?
Yeah, so Adam, going year prior, you had mentioned that the capped assessment was at 7.7%, and this year down to 3.2%. So I'm assuming that's a good news story, but would you have any insight on, the decision there, why you seen that come down, or?
Well, it's directly linked to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So basically inflation, really. So I think I don't want to misspeak, but I'm not an expert in how it's calculated. We received that number from the provincial government. So, but you can go online and see from month over month, how it's calculated and what that cap rate is set at. We get the final value. It's all goods Consumer Price Index. So if you were looking on the Nova Scotia government website, and there's a bunch of different numbers there, but it's all goods directly linked to the CPI, and you can see that it's released every month. But we get the final number of what that's going to be set at at the end of November, right before the roll comes out.
I think the other interesting part about CPI this year, as Adam said, it's year to year. It's the Stats Canada CPI for Nova Scotia. And it was tracking, last year it was 7.7, and it was tracking in the 5s and 6s for quite a while. And then it came down quite quickly the last few months to that 3.2%, reflecting that inflation had come down quite a bit just a couple of months prior to the actual roll going out. So yes, the CPI rate, or the amount that assessments would go up as far as the cap, the maximum amount that are capped was less than half of what it was last year, 7.7 versus 3.2.
You're good, Deputy Warden? Okay, thank you, Paul and Adam. Any other questions for the team?
Yeah. Hey guys, I just have one quick one. You said PBSC uses a mass appraisal system to determine the value. I guess one of the questions I would have from the residents is how does that determine if, because we've seen increases from anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 within the single area, and we've also seen $1 million homes assessed for $500,000 and $100,000 homes assessed for $200,000. So I guess the question is, I know you say at the end of December, you kind of make the visual, or you go around to, the state date, you make the physical state of the properties then on December, but I'm just wondering how that's done, how there's such a wide gap.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So two things there. So it's a physical state of the property, right, as of December 1st. What we do, we have, so the 2020, as Paul mentioned, the 2024 assessments based on, the base date for that is January 1st, 2023. So the state of the market at that time, which consists of sales, market activity in the 2022 calendar year. So a couple different things, and it's a great question because it's really one of the most common ones that we've seen. We see every inquiry period, how can different properties in a similar area be assessed differently or go up different percentages. I think that was around the first part of your question. So when we do our reassessment each year, we're looking at sales within each market area within each municipality. So we review sales prices. That's why we review all every sale that comes in the municipality, just to make sure that our data is correct. Our data is correct, that we're not missing anything, because when we go to do our yearly reassessment, we do reassessments each year in every neighborhood. So when we're doing that, we're using, in the residential file, we use the most reliable approach to value. Paul mentioned the 3 approaches to value. It's a direct sales comparison approach. So different properties may increase at different percentages depending on each, physical attribute that they have within that property. So they might be in a similar area. They could have different physical characteristics, and thus they would increase differently depending on the type of property. The main factors that drive value be year built, factor in renovations, things like that. And then also, so that's one of the main things we see using the direct sales comparison approach when we do those yearly reassessments. Depending on the physical characteristics of each property, they may increase differently. And then also, when we're reviewing those sales or reviewing the building permits, especially with building permits, because it's usually renovations or new builds or things like that, they're obviously going to increase more than ones that don't take out building permits or don't do the renovations, because we're adding, those renovations are increasing the market value of their home most often. So those are usually the main reasons why they would increase differently. But I guess we do the yearly reassessment in those market areas based on the sales to set those market rates. And then it's a great question, and like I said, it's probably one of the most common ones that we get. But we always, whenever we're speaking to the public or engaging with property owners, we encourage them to. There's a couple things that they can do. They can check their My Property report on our website. They have a PIN access code that they can go in just to make sure that what they're seeing and what they're being assessed for, they can confirm the details of their property on there. And then if they have any questions on value, or they think, because when it comes under appeal, at the end of the day, it falls back to Section 42 of the Assessment Act. So it comes down to, is your property worth? If you were to sell that property on the open market, is it worth that value? And if owners call in and read our website and they still think it's too high, or they still they're not in agreement with our value, then by all means send the appeal in. But we do encourage them to check out, to look at our website, or call in and speak to an assessor, and then they can make their decision after that.
I think just to add to it, one of the important things with mass appraisal is having sufficient sales in order to validate market movements. And the past 2 years, as you can appreciate, sales volumes have been up significantly, and it gave us, it really allowed us to look at the data and take a really good look at it, and have enough data in many of the neighborhoods in order to actually reset at market value. Sometimes if you don't have enough sales in some neighborhoods, we really can't move it unless we're seeing that evidence. So the fact that there's enough sales, and I'll give you an example here as well. The largest segment of homes in Richmond, residential properties, are built between 1980 1980 and 2000. And 2 years ago, or for the roll 2 years ago, or the previous year's roll, there were 66 homes in that 2 years ago there were 85 homes in that category, and they sold in the market on average for 168,000. And then for this roll there were 66 sales, and they sold on average for 215,000. So that's about 25%, and that's exactly what the market's telling us, is that, you know, these properties are selling for this amount on average. So you see that 25% in the market with good, strong sales, and that's why you're seeing some of the higher changes. And some neighborhoods less changes, some neighborhoods more changes, but on average, that's the type of numbers we're talking about. Hope that answered it for you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Adam, for your response on that. I think we will have to call it there because we do have a full agenda, but thank you for providing your contact information. Certainly, if there's any follow-up from council or from members of the public, we can reach out to you using those channels. Really appreciate your time. Very thorough presentation this evening, and yeah, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as you say, if you have any questions, just funnel them through the CAO or the clerk, and they have our contact information. We'd be glad to answer any questions or inquiries you may have. So thank you very much once again, and have a good rest of your meeting.
All right, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so there was just a single presentation on our agenda for this evening, so we'll move on to the next item of business, which is new business, and it's the Richmond Water Utility Water Rate Study. So the information has been provided in your agenda packages in advance. I want to thank the team for putting that together along with the summary of what you were, of where we're at with things. It's much appreciated. So I'll open this maybe for discussion from council, but I'm not sure, Troy, if you staff would like to discuss. We talked about this earlier today, just in meeting the two of us. The rate studies are something I think that are required every 8 years or sooner if the utility is determined not to be in a liquid situation. So, yeah, I just used your pun there, didn't I? I totally borrowed your pun. So it's not an unusual process, and it is really to ensure that the long-term sustainability of the utilities is looked after. But any comments or questions from council or comments from staff, however you would like to start that is fine. Okay. So if there's no, I guess, questions or, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, one thing that stuck out to me during the presentation is that they had mentioned that the revenue or consumption was a whole lot less, not a lot less, but less from year to year or whatever. So I guess that's a good news story, Chris, right? So we're being more efficient, I guess, and then things are, working the way they should. I guess my question would be, is there more that we could do to even improve that efficiency even more? Or is that something? Yeah. I know, yeah.
Give him an inch and he'll take a mile, right? Okay.
Sorry.
Madam Chair, through you to council, there's a number of water conservation websites out there on how people can do it, but what happens beyond the meter is a personal choice, and you could see a family of 4 use amount X, and a different family of 4 use 3 times that for varying reasons. So, but yeah, there's lots of websites out there, and maybe as we go forward with this, some social media stuff, to throw that information out there to point homeowners if they have thoughts on, how to get their consumption down. Like there's lots of municipalities in urban environments now where there's monitors right in the home where you can see when a tap gets turned on by the wall unit there. It's counting every drop of water coming out of there. And they see that when that information is present and right in front of the homeowners, they see consumption just plummet. Well, we're not there yet, but there are technologies being developed, and by all means, keep your eyes out there. And those that are interested, I'm sure there's lots of sites where people can get ideas to help with their consumption.
Okay. Thanks, CAO. I do want to also mention that I think since we approved our strategic plan at the last meeting, the full agenda package with the full rate study is published. So for members of the public, if you're interested in seeing it, all bazillion pages of it are there. It's a lengthy one. But I guess as a next step, staff is looking to have council approve the rate study before submitting it to the UARB. So I have a motion prepared, but I don't want to jump any steps if folks have additional comments. Okay, so essentially we're looking for a motion that the municipality of the County of Richmond apply to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board for changes in its rates for water and water service, fire protection to the municipality of the County of Richmond, and changes to its rules and regulations for customers served by the municipality of the County of Richmond Water Utility as set out in the water rate study prepared by G.A. Eisner Consulting Limited in association with Blaine S. Rooney Consulting Limited.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion on the water study report? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, that motion is carried. So just want to say again a huge thank you to staff for preparing that. I know it was a big piece of work, and Chris, you were front and center on that, so really appreciate it. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, I have a couple of items under my name here. So I did provide a council report, just to give you a sense of some of the meetings and activities that have been ongoing since our last meeting. So this takes us to February 12th. Were there any questions on that? Okay, on that report, I'll move to the next agenda item. It's a good segue. Is the Municipality of the District of Guysborough UK Learning Tour. So just want to give councillors a sense of what that tour entailed, and I did provide a 6-page or 7-page 2-pager, so apologies for that. Brevity is not my strength, but I just want to thank the Municipality of the District of Guysborough for organizing the tour. As a co-chair for the Strait of Canso Offshore Wind Task Force, I was invited to participate. It was a learning tour with a whole variety of stakeholders that included representatives from the task force, as I mentioned, the provincial government, Natural Resources and Renewables was in attendance, the federal government through ACOA, the Guysborough County Inshore Fishers Association, the Strait of Canso Superport Corporation, and Melford Terminals. The learning tour was jammed into a couple of days where we visited projects in both Aberdeen and Newcastle from January 28th to the 31st. I do want to mention some of the learning outcomes. Obviously they're an industry in that region that is 30 years ahead of where we are today. It's clear that the UK government has certainly identified energy transition and the green economy as a top priority based on the millions and millions of pounds that they are investing into that sector of the economy. And as you can tell from the enabling policy development as well. A couple of key pieces I wanted to note, though, just from the tours was that the strong professional services and industry associations that have been created to support the responsible sector development and to ensure an appropriate level of community engagement. And I know that the Cape Breton Partnership, Net Zero Atlantic, and certainly the task force itself have been working really hard on the community engagement side, but there's more work to be done, and glad to see that we're kind of going in that direction of creating those organizations. I do want to also say that their focus was on active and inclusive collaboration and a real focus on innovative marine spatial planning to ensure that fisheries, energy, and other sectors can coexist in our waters. Their training facilities, I got there a day ahead of the rest of the group, and was able to take the Sunday morning to tour a training facility in Aberdeen that was not on the original agenda, as well as visit one in Newcastle that was on the agenda. And I have to say the quality of those spaces was quite something to behold, and the busyness of those spaces, and learned a lot about some of the innovative ways that they are working with groups such as ex-forces to recruit, retrain people for green economy jobs. A lot of talk about their underwater infrastructure, depending on which side of the coin you were on, either how that can drive part of the economy forward or how we can minimize the footprint of that, because we have other sectors that, that share the ocean as well, obviously. And, certainly would point out that the UK's ambition to have as much benefit land where developments are taking place is being directly supported by the private sector and by the public sector as well. They're doing some really innovative work and aggressive work, I would say, to develop local supply chains, research and training institutions. We talked about maybe an enabling role for government to do a bit of a play fairway style analysis to shrink data collection times. So that's essentially where the Nova Scotia government could go out and do some preparatory work on data collection that would be available to any developer to reduce those kinds of burdens. Also of interest to me was the discussion on ports. So we did visit, obviously, the Port of Aberdeen, Port of Tyne as well, and ports, basically the observation was that ports that have waited for private sector development or private sector investment before investing in infrastructure and readiness, they've missed the opportunity to attract those large private sector investments in projects. Clients look for certainty and surety, and when you don't have the facilities to attract them, they'll often go elsewhere. And of course, currently, or I guess we recently had a request for proposals out for an offshore wind center of excellence, looking at what that could look like for Nova Scotia. So visiting the ORE Catapult model in the UK was quite eye-opening, and although certainly at a different scale to anything that our governments or private sector, I think, would be able to support at this stage in Nova Scotia. But we have to start somewhere, and I think these types of learning tours are really valuable. I've included some pretty detailed notes on each of the visits. I think there were 9 or 10 meetings, and happy to answer any questions on that, but I also recognize there's a lot of detail there. So thanks again to our hosts at the District of Guysborough for opening the door to that. One of the engagement sessions that occurred in Discoos for the Cape Breton Partnership and Net Zero Atlantic's sort of community consultation, there was a one person in particular in the audience who said, we have a job to do here, and it's learning as much as we can about this sector before we jump in with both feet, and that this type of thing, I have to say, even more valuable, than going to a conference where you have many, many delegates and presenters, but you're kind of getting that sort of to the many communication. This was very targeted, and the visits were very much I guess, designed and planned with the potential of the sector here at play. So you had really much more in-depth conversations, and it was really, really useful. So, any questions on that? Okay. I have put some pictures on my Facebook if anybody would like to see them. I was going to do a slideshow presentation, but then I thought, no, well, we can just provide a 7-page report instead. Why would we do that? Right? Anyway, okay. So if there's no questions, I'll move us on to the next item on the agenda, switching gears completely. And it really is on emergency management and, of course, the storm. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to have a meeting right after an historic snowstorm without putting it on the agenda and discussing it in an open council meeting. it was an extremely challenging time for many people. Especially, I want to, recognize that those who couldn't get out of their homes for many days and those who live on secondary roads that couldn't get cleared, right away. And the shelter-in-place advisory itself, I think, was really hard on people after, like, the second, third day, and that went on for the better part of a week. We're a community that's very used to helping out and getting out, and there was a lot of, questions about whether or not comfort centers should open, but certainly the road conditions, they were dangerous, and so we needed to stick to that shelter-in-place advisory. Our Municipal Emergency Management Committee debriefs on these types of events to ensure we're continuously learning about how we can improve our processes and keep people safe. We always need to be doing that, so I'm looking forward. I think we have something scheduled later for this month. It was actually scheduled for, I think, the Monday of the storm, but we thought, well, we're not going to, this is not the best timing. We're going to let emergency management focus on emergency management. But I do want to just say, in those times of stress and difficulty, it always helps to look for the helpers, and we had no shortage of those. I know, Steve Marcellus, our EMC, put the communication out about, if there's anybody who can't get out or needs help, whatever, let us know. And that information had been collected, sent up the line. And very specifically want to say thank you to our local fire departments, who did countless wellness checks and helped to shovel people out when they couldn't open their front doors, the provincial plow drivers who took, I think, every shift possible to clear the roads, and the paramedics and our CMP who diligently responded to emergency calls, as well as, of course, the neighbors and family and friends who lent a hand or a shovel or whatever they had available to them to help dig people out. So we're fortunate to have many people to help in those times, and just makes me very thankful. But it was certainly a scary one. It was a once-in-a-generation storm. My feeling is that we're having more and more of those once-in-a-generation climate events. I guess that does tie a little bit back to the energy transition piece that we discussed earlier, but it was difficult to keep up with, and so we will do a debrief. We'll talk about communication and equipment and all of the things, but at the end of the day, we do appreciate people's patience, because sometimes these things just take some time to clear up, and I know everyone was working as fast and as hard as they could. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that or comments. I know, Steve, you're here this evening. Just want to say thank you again for your work, and to Troy and all the staff who participated. Okay. Nobody wants to talk about the storm. Everybody wants to forget the storm happened. I agree. And maybe there's hopefully none coming this week. So I don't know if we're going to luck out that way or not. But. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes,
just for a
absolutely.
second, I do want to elaborate on saying to staff, to our own public works as well, that had our facilities and our buildings open. I know that's what you meant as well, but we were back open and operational quicker than any other municipality. So, size does play a part. We are rather small and we have few facilities, but our teams were out there. They had the landfill open, the water kept flowing, and the rink got opened as well. So kudos to the team, and thanks to all of them for working safely and getting out there and getting it done.
Yeah. Well said. Thanks, Troy. Absolutely. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments on that, then I do want to move us on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Vulnerable Persons Registry update. So just kind of refreshing folks' memory, we did in September, I think, pass a resolution at council asking Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities to work with the province on a registry that would be integrated with the 911 system. That resolution was sent in October off to Minister Lohr as well as to NSFM. We did receive a response from Minister Lohr in December, and I just want to make sure I get the wording right, but his letter indicated there were no plans in place at that time for a provincial vulnerable persons registry. Across North America, these registries are operationalized by first responders at the local level. So that came from the minister in early December, and I know was tabled in a council meeting. However, we did also receive this week a response from NSFM. So they've issued a response noting that NSFM has officially adopted, I guess, the Vulnerable Persons Registry as an advocacy priority. And I think that's a really positive step because, you know, each municipality could be doing its own thing and reinventing the wheel 49 times, I think there are of us. So the participation of NSFM as an advocacy partner in this helps to kind of maybe, I won't say ensure, but facilitate something a little more standardized. At this stage of the game, you know, I guess what I'm looking to do is ask council if you would consider making a motion to officially refer the Vulnerable Persons Registry work to our Municipal Emergency Management Committee for discussion and to see if we could make some advancements on the file here locally based, you know, working with NSFM or other municipalities who have an interest to see if we could get something started here to demonstrate some leadership on this file and to improve some safety of our residents, of our most vulnerable residents too. So I'd open that for discussion or questions from council.
Yeah, no, I think, Madam Warden, you know, going back to the previous topic and talking about the storm of last week, I think it's very important that we do our part here to make sure that we, you know, we follow up and do what we can here when it comes to this this list of vulnerable people, right? And we, like you had mentioned earlier, we had a lot of people that were vulnerable in this storm and in a lot of bad situations, right? So for us to have some sort of registry, to me, I think is important, and we should do what we can to move it forward for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. And I know, Troy, from our conversations through this past storm, you had mentioned that there was a form that the province had sent out that was really a standardized template. Was that for reporting where people would need assistance? And that's the kind of thing we could look at. It doesn't need to be a complicated tool, but if we could all use something consistent, I think would be really helpful. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Absolutely, and it was set up with the fields so that it could just plug into the system at the province, which makes sense. It's centralized repository, and then that way the information they get from Richmond is identical to what they get from Digby across the province, and that's really what we were looking for and hoping for with this. So I strongly suggest we don't give up on it and we keep going so that it does get centralized and standardized right across our province.
Okay, thanks, Troy. So could I have a motion then, if councillors are in agreement, to refer this item for action to the Municipal Emergency Management Committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on that item? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, moving right along. All right, so next item on the agenda, I believe, is the, under the CAO, we have an administration operations report. And just want to begin by noting that that is expanding all the time to include all of the activities going on. It's a little bit daunting to know that we've got so many hands working on so many various important issues for our constituents and the people of Richmond County. So any questions for Troy on the admin ops report, or if Troy, if you would like to speak to anything in particular, I'll invite you to do so.
Well, the big one would be on the IT side of things, that Clayton said appoint our IT person to start working with you one-on-one, so make your appointments with them so that you have your phone, you have your devices, so we can get everybody switched over to the Microsoft 365. Yeah, no, it should only take 10-15 minutes to get everybody done, and each person, and then we'll be rolling out training opportunities or maybe lunch and learn or something so we can get in and make sure that we're using it to the best of its ability and everybody's comfortable with it, because with it, we'll change our council packages and a number of other things. So just getting everybody familiar with it, technology is great, but it can be a challenge. So we just want to make it as comfortable as possible because everybody loves change. we'll make this as painless as possible, and Clayton is, hammering out the bugs that we're coming across one at a time. It's a long process. We deal with lots of partners, but he's working, and I shout out to Kit, who continues to work with us and help us transition. It's been a good working relationship, and progress is being made. So thank you, and bear with us, just like the snowstorm, patience, and we'll get there. It'll be worth it in the end.
Thanks, Troy. Any questions for Troy on that item? Councillor Sampson? No, you're good? Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is community acknowledgements. And we always start our community acknowledgements with acknowledging our volunteer of the month. And this past month, the volunteer of the month is Jean Kehoe. From the Rocky Bay Irish Club, whose work has profoundly impacted the local community through her extensive efforts in creating, directing, and supporting the Shamrock Players. Jean has become a vital force in the club's success. Her fundraising initiatives demonstrate strong leadership and ensures the club's sustainability. And just so I'm getting this right, the Shamrock Players are the group that puts on the shows, right? Yeah, I know. And if anybody can help me, hook me up with tickets to that, I would really like to get some. I've missed out.
Better chance to go to the Super Bowl.
A better chance to go to the Super Bowl. Every time I look, they're sold out. Anyway, I'm too late to the party, so I'm counting on the team here to help me with that. In her more recent endeavors, Jean has taken the lead in organizing 2 memorable John Prine tribute shows, creating engaging trivia nights and multiple Mrs. Brown's Boys Dinner Theaters. Just needed to keep reading. And that has attracted attendees from beyond Halifax and bringing laughter and joy to all. So throughout these events, Jean not only showcased her dedication, but also provided unwavering support to a dedicated team of volunteers, always with kindness and a warm smile. So please join us in recognizing Jean for her hard work, dedication, and commitment to her community. By all accounts, it sounds like she is moving and shaking with the Rocky Bay Irish Club. So much appreciated, Jean. Thank you. Anybody have any questions on that or comments, or if you'd like to make additional community acknowledgements, now is the time. Councillor David?
Yeah, no, I won't make any additional ones, but I would, again, it's a great pick for the volunteer of the month, and again, just by reading the report, she is definitely, she's one of those people that's always around the Rocky Bay Hall and every function. I don't think there's a function that goes on that Jean either doesn't have a hand in setting it up or the task at hand. So, yeah, great job and great pick for the month.
Okay, Deputy Warden. I know I can always count on you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I'm just going to go back, Madam Warden, to a topic earlier on when it came to last week's storm. For me, my approach has always been not to point out anyone when it comes to major events or, major organizing events. And when it comes to benefits and events in our community, you try not to pinpoint out anyone, and this is no different. I just want to thank anybody that was behind the wheel of a snow removal clearing equipment. Some of those guys practically slept in those equipments, right, in those rigs, right? So just want to thank them all. I also want to thank everybody that had to work through that storm, to serve and protect and provide for the residents of Richmond County. So, I just want to thank everybody for a job well done last week. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Deputy Warden. There we go. Thanks, Deputy Warden. Well said. Lots of sleepless nights, I'm sure, by many people to get that all together. Okay. All right. So if there's no further community acknowledgements, I'll move us on to the next item on the agenda, which is correspondence. And we do have one piece of correspondence that does have action required from Sergeant Brad Kelly of the RCMP regarding road safety in Richmond County. Essentially, Brad has provided us with a note requesting access to the data from the speed radar signs that are set up or have been set up in various locations in the county. he's basically looking to gain access to the data so they can properly position the members and choose the best time of day to conduct traffic enforcement in the county. This kind of enforcement, has the chance of, reduces the chance of harm to people and property, and also has the potential to save lives. Certainly, he's very interested in gaining access to the data so they can plan accordingly. So would councillors be okay with providing that data? I think it's why we did it in the first place. Yeah, well, it certainly is a big part of the reason, right, was to ask people to slow down. This initiative did come from council to get the speed radar signs in place originally, so appreciate staff bringing this back to us with the request from Sergeant Kelly for sure. So any comments on that? Do we need a motion, probably?
Oh, please.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So could we get a motion to approve the request for access to data from speed radar signs in Richmond County, and further move that staff provide Sergeant Kelly with the requested information?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Melanie Sampson has seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
So what data are we providing exactly? Is it just the speed and the times when it hit? Or what?
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm looking at one of the reports right now, and I won't say where, and I won't say what time of day, but I will say that 339 cars went by, and 91% of them were speeding. So it does total vehicles, total violations, percent violations, what the min speed, max speed, and kilometers and counts. So yeah, it
Not
has
license plates.
It is not license plates. It's
relax.
it's not pictures of any kind. But it does break it down in the whole 24-hour cycle, which is important for our traffic enforcement because they're seeing when the violations are happening, though some places it's happening throughout the whole cycle. So, lots of work to be done there, but yeah, it gave them really, really useful information. So.
No, thank you for that. No, and I think it's good to be, I know it doesn't take photos, but it's good that it's clear for the public at home that it doesn't do photo radar, and we're providing it for them, so.
And Madam Chair, if I may, on our side, operationally through Public Works, we only look at the counts and the time of day counts for yearly counts if we need empirical data for capital improvements or going to the province with requests. So that's the only reason we have them.
Great. Okay, thanks, Troy. So, any further discussion? Okay, no, we're good? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and I believe which is the Coastal Riders Trail access, and I believe our CAO has an update for us on that. Over to you, Troy.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Met with the Coastal Riders on site a couple weeks ago now. Observed what they were proposing. Want to thank them for having the foresight to want to do something out there to protect the investment we already made in the capping of that previous landfill site. A trail does go along there as it stands right now. So right now we are waiting on legal just to make sure we understand what liabilities are there. What they're proposing seems like a great idea, but again, we have to make sure that legally I can come back to you guys with a report so we know what allowing them to build a snow fence along there opens us up to. And once we have that report, then we'll come back, but they, kudos to them for reaching out to us to want to work with us and try and protect and realize the costs that the municipality incurred trying to reclaim that land out there. And they're just trying to keep honest people honest, which, is awesome. So we appreciate that. And as soon as we get an answer, it'll be coming back to council. Okay.
Thank you, Troy. Any questions on that? Okay, next item on the agenda is the review of checks issued. This is for information only, so does anybody have any questions on the review of checks or comments? Okay, the next item is the review of the action items, again for information only. Any questions or comments on the action items list? I do have one comment, Shelley, we can mark item 313 about the vulnerable persons registry. We can mark that complete because I took care of that today once we regrouped on that item. I love marking things complete on the list. It makes me feel good. It's beautiful. All right. If there's no questions then on the action items, we'll move on to the next, which is items added to the agenda. And I did add the PAC, the Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee membership. You know, over the past number of years, I know there are 3 councillors appointed to the PAC right now, along with 2 members of the public. My feeling over the last number of years is that it creates an information gap, I feel, for me as a councillor at the table. So I know I've attended some in the past, that the reality is if they don't get jammed in my schedule, then I do miss them. So my question, I guess, or suggestion is that we and I don't know, Councillor Digdon, I think you're the other councillor who is not on that membership right now. Would council be agreeable to appointing both Councillor Digdon and myself to the PAC for the remainder of this period? Because I think it's something that we were looking at putting into our committee structure review anyway, was to ensure that all of council has membership at that committee. It would allow us to take part in the discussions, as well as not just listen in, but also would allow us to take part in any in-camera discussions as well. So, so I'm just putting it on the table that we don't need to wait for to have all of our committee structure pieces in place. We can just add the additional councillors to the committee if that's the will of council. So that's my suggestion at this point. I'm open for discussion on that. Recognizing perhaps, Councillor Digdon, I'm volunteering or suggesting a piece of work there, but without having spoken to you, but certainly, certainly I would be interested in sitting at the table, so. Sorry. It is one of our most powerful tools as a council, right? That and the Policy and Bylaw Committee. So I think having all of us there, as we do for Policy and Bylaw, tends to make a bit of sense. But anyway, I'll leave that open for discussion for council. Yep.
I hit the button before you gave me the go-ahead to speak. I would tend to agree with you. I just feel like it's a very key, it really is something we should have changed a long time ago, as we went into the Plan Richmond and a whole bunch of other pretty significant pieces of work, I think, at PAC over the past number of years. And I think that it does present a bit of a gap as we move things forward to council. And I do think, to your point, when I think about committees that should have all members of council, I think, bylaw, policy, audit, those make sense. I think PAC makes sense as well. So I would certainly be in support of that. I'm just not sure if I have, just where it was added tonight, I haven't had a chance, and maybe you have, to make sure, is there any, policies or whatever that we need to adjust to allow that to be?
So it would be just the committee structure that we approved 3+ years ago. I think that is the only place where.
Maybe terms of reference for it.
And the terms, the associated terms of reference, yeah. I don't know, comments, any? Yeah.
My only thought, would it make more sense to do that maybe going forward for the next term, in the sense that they're open meetings now, so we either could attend if you want, and are pretty open to allowing you in on the discussion. You know what I mean? If need be.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, and I have attended, and I know, Councillor Digdon, you've attended some as well. The point is that we don't have a voice officially at that table, and we can't vote on matters either. So I'm just kind of one of those why wait kind of people, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, just that they all come back to council anyway. And I think we've only ever had one in camera, which was, which you're good on now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Madam Warden. And it was that one in camera, I think, that that kind of, turned this ball rolling a little faster. Again, the problem with the in-camera meeting is that you and myself are not privy to that information, I guess, until it comes. And sometimes it's the cart before the horse, unfortunately. And last week that's what happened. But again, yeah, I'm like you. I think that it's and like Councillor Sampson, I think it's definitely a need to have us on those very important committees. So I would, yeah, I think sooner than later.
And I mean, I think to Councillor Sampson's point, like in the past, both of you have come to the committee meetings and spoken freely, but really, I honestly, that never made me feel comfortable. That made me actually feel uncomfortable because that it's not an open meeting for all people to discuss. And I've, to be honest, felt like there were liberties granted because of your position on council. So I personally would be more comfortable if it was in that, like if it was in an official capacity, and then future councils can make whatever decisions they want in terms of their committee structures, if they feel it's better to be streamlined or not.
Yeah, no, I certainly have felt uncomfortable speaking up, even though I'm squirming in my chair sometimes, and I'm like, and I know, and I appreciate, Councillor Brent Sampson as the chair, you've been very accommodating that way, but it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I know it's not an official capacity, right? So, okay.
Just want to make one more comment. I also think that, just because all members of council sit on that committee, I don't feel that there is a need for the warden to be the chair of that committee. And again, that's something I've kind of said before. I don't necessarily feel that warden needs to be the chair of any of those committees of council. I think that's the way it's been, but, and I know we are going to look at our committee structures, so that can be part of that conversation, but.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm not looking to make any more. If we could just settle down on that, that would be great. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm not looking to make any kind of wholesale changes, just looking to be an official part of the discussion. Okay, so if that's the case, perhaps I could ask for a motion to add Warden Mumbercat and Councillor Digdon to the Planning Advisory Committee effective immediately, and to update the terms of reference accordingly. Someone care to make that motion?
I'll make
Deputy Warden? Thanks, Deputy Warden.
I don't know. I just keep pushing the button and cutting people off. It's a terrible night for me. I'm going to second that now that I've pushed the button again.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So the motion has been made. Could I, any further discussion on that? Sorry. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay. That motion is carried. Okay. So at this point, there are no other items added to the agenda, so we'll open it for a 15-minute question period, a maximum of 15 minutes. The number to call for folks who are watching at home, and I think we are live streamed this evening, is 902-226-9885. It's 902-226-9885. And I would also just like to say it's 10 after 8. Yes, I thought we were going to be here a lot longer looking at the agenda, but we've motored through, and it's, been a great meeting, so. All right, we're just going to give that a few minutes because I think there's a little delay. Okay, so we'll call it and close question period, and there being no further business, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks to staff again for your work. Much appreciated. Have a great evening, everyone.